Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. Haven't been on here for a while, so I thought I would come on here. Haven't had a shave for a while by the look of things in this quarantine life that I'm getting used to. Not too different from my normal life a lot of the time, working from home with what I do with OCD. So I do spend a lot of time on calls at home, but I miss not being able to walk outside and walk to the shops and so on, but it takes a little bit of adjustment. Not anxious about it, but just you miss the life before, Been probably, how long have I been at home now? Probably 2.5, 3 weeks realistically, because I'm not in England, so obviously in England it's just changed, where people have just been quarantined recently. So I thought I'd come on here to talk about some various aspects of OCD, about questions and answers and so on, the different things that you want to ask. I'll congratulate Mumajed, first of all, on winning the meme competition with his fantastic meme that definitely nailed the old thoughts are just thoughts situation, which is an important part of OCD recovery. It's a very important part of learning that thoughts are just thoughts, and we can have any thought or feeling or anything in any format that can happen. But it then gets blown out of proportion by people that tend to know not much about OCD, where it's said sort of all around the world as, just thoughts are just thoughts. Don't worry, that's not real, which becomes a reassurance cycle followed by just the thoughts are just thoughts, sort of mantra said over and over and over again. And then the person goes around all the time saying thoughts are just thoughts all the time, which doesn't do any good. So I thought that was a really good message in that video, and a funny one, how he did it. Congratulations to Mumajed from Libya, where obviously OCD treatment is like most places in the world, it's not very good, especially there they've got very limited understanding of OCD. So it's great to be working with him in one-to-one and group sessions. And what I also thought was really good about his situation is how he did with his video that he did. He's got sensory motor OCD, so he's concerned about his breathing and his speaking, which can make public speaking difficult. Because when you've got that sensory motor OCD, what happens is you're very inward focused on how you're breathing, how you're thinking about your breathing and so on. And so even for him to speak that was difficult for him. So I thought that was fantastic, his video, and I look forward to working with him. Now, topics that I wanted to cover today. What did I want to cover? Some of my posts that I post. Sometimes when I post stuff on Instagram stories, I don't have to be too concerned about getting 25 comments saying that the post has been misinterpreted or badly written or whatever, because people don't tend to send those kind of messages on Instagram stories. But when I do put them on the wall, it's open to that, which I am very open to discussing all points because I stand by them, and I'm open to change my beliefs on any point. But often what happens on the wall is you get comments that don't have any rational reason or any good argument backing them up whatsoever, and they just go round and round. So often you'll see someone will go through the comments, find a point they agree with, and then type amen to one comment, and then find a bit that they disagree with and just go, that's rubbish, I don't like that, without putting any additional beneficial argument to the conversation, which blows my mind. I always think, well, what's the bloody point in doing that? If you're going to discuss something on the comments, you've got to come with some argument that is a good argument in relation to what you're discussing. And far too often that's not the case. I put up a comment and then say, and it's very clear what the message is, and then someone will say, but you forgot to include this, or you didn't account for that. And it's like, well, I'm not going to account for everything in a tweet that's got a limited number of characters, that you can only put a certain amount, and I don't need to include all the other things. So it's always funny in those situations, lots of discussions that build, especially some of the ones that I think are very, very important to highlight. But I do think that they have, the reason that people often get frustrated is because of the link that people think that it defeats somehow their identity or their world. It doesn't. When I was saying a quote about everything happens for a reason. Now I know that can be linked into religion and that becomes a tricky subject. But in terms of everything happens for a reason, It's a quote that's used in celebrity culture all bloody day. And the reason they do that is because if you've just won your 5th Oscar or whatever, nothing wrong with that at all, that whole life, nothing wrong with that. But let me just set the scene of why this thinking occurs. So if you have just won another Oscar or life and everything's going well, the reason life's going well is because when you're in a successful position, other doors open much more easily at that time. So then those things all happen. Absolutely fine, all those things. But then to deny all luck or all sort of positioning that's in the process is completely bonkers. And then what people say is usually everything happens for a reason. Like there's some kind of God almost. Like, this has all happened to me because everything happens for a reason. That's because you're in a winning seat. If you're sitting in hospital dying of coronavirus right now, you are not going to be thinking everything happens for a reason. It's when things are good that feels like that, but that is not reality. Why do we know that? Because if everything happens for a reason when things are good, everything's got to happen for a reason when things are bad, and that's obviously not the case because we don't want people to die and get ill. So everything happens for a reason. By definition, it doesn't make any sense. The only reason things feel like they happen for a reason is because one thing will lead to another thing. So if I start running and then I get fit, it didn't just happen for a reason. It's because I was running before. So things happen for a reason because of other things that open the door. Now, it's very easy when everything's going well to think everything happens for a reason, because when it is, it feels like, oh my God, everything I touch is just turning into great things and so on. But that is not reality. And I realised that very quickly when I had OCD as a kid, because everything I was doing was not turning out well. It was turning out worse in my mind, and things were getting scary and so on and so on. So I started to realise, well, actually, things don't go well all the time, but we can influence those as well, and we can help those situations. But they do not just happen for just a nice sort of reason that comes out of the sky to me and says, okay, this is going to happen to you. I'm not saying from a God perspective. I'm talking particularly with this sort of law of attraction perspective, which is where if you ask the universe for things, or you just want things to happen or so on, then everything good happens. That doesn't happen. That's not how things work. So we can't just sort of go to the universe, please get rid of my OCD, or please, or all these kinds of things. It doesn't work like that. You do have to put in work and make change, and then change happens to then cause another effect that brings about change again, that then brings a benefit. So that's what happens. And it's very important. Why am I going on about this today so much? Well, I'll tell you why it's so vital. Because there are so many self-help books written about law of attraction, everything happens for a reason, and it fills a part of our mind where we want that to be the case, where we're like, oh, that's a lovely thing to think, everything happens for a reason, how lovely and comfortable that feels. But it is not reality, because people with OCD who are following those books thinking that they're waiting for something to happen and they don't get better. You're not going to do that. Yes, you'll hear a story of someone who says, yes, I asked the universe for that and then my business was very successful in this sort of The Secret book-like concept. But the reason that happens is because they worked extremely hard. They believed absolutely in themselves. They did one thing after another to get the result they wanted. That's what brought about the change, not them just saying, can it happen, please, right? So that is very, very important. And the other problem with the everything happens for a reason is it's just a situation where if you've got OCD, you can easily get into a habit very quickly of thinking, oh my God, I brought all this on myself. So because this all happens for a reason. So there's a reason I must have OCD. Oh, what kind of reason could that be? Oh, maybe I'm just not a very nice person. Maybe I deserve this. And that's all absolute nonsense. So I think it's so important to highlight that. Everything doesn't happen for a reason. Things that we do and random events that happen bring about those things to occur. So I do want to sort of highlight that message because I think it's a very, very important message for the reason that you're going to see more and more celebrity books that that will basically love that message. They take the secret model of The Secret book, they go, that was a bestseller, right, package that up in some nice words. People want to be like me, so I'll tell them, everything happens for a reason. You can ask the universe for it, you can just do that and you'll get it. Or other things that they often say are things like working on self-esteem, which self-esteem is complete nonsense. If you read The Myth of Self-Esteem by the founder of CBT, Albert Ellis, breaks it down very clearly why that isn't the case. But that was constantly reiterated, and you can't, trying to prop up self-esteem all the time, which is a conditional, is going to get you absolutely nowhere. So I think it's very important to stress that strong message in relation to those points that are going to be covered so much these days, because nowadays everybody is talking about the mind and motivation and all these different things with quite a limited knowledge of that subject. And so those things get mentioned, and then people then with OCD go, oh, but they said everything happens for a reason, so that means I must have OCD for that reason, or I'm only going to get better if that thing happens. And then there's various versions of those things, like that all interact and cause more OCD problems. Anyway, I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. Let's go through a few of these questions, see if there's any that come in. 1 second. Would you do a live video specifically aimed at family members, partners of OCD sufferers, if you haven't already? Yes, I have done one for family. I think it's on my YouTube channel, so if you go on there, you will find that. So yeah, there should be one there on that, definitely, but I will do others because it's an important topic. I did one, I think, only a few months ago, so if you ever look back through that, you should find it, or on Facebook Watch, on my Facebook page with videos on there. I'm having a hard time dealing with uncertainty. Yeah, uncertainty I will cover in a separate topic, because there's quite a lot that goes into that situation, into understanding about uncertainty. Aren't we supposed to look at thoughts as just thoughts, though? Accepting thoughts? Absolutely, that's what I was saying. It's very important to look at things as just thoughts and have an understanding, but if they're sticky and they do not release, you will need a deeper level of acceptance, because it usually does not release just like that. What is the best way to tackle groinal responses? How can I look at it as an indicator that my fear is real? I'll cover that in a separate topic relating to sexual OCD and POCD. It occurs because people need to believe there's a reason. Absolutely. That's the reason. It occurs because people need to believe there's a reason, but they don't need it. They just think they do need it, but they definitely do not need a reason. Humans clearly find it hard to cope with uncertainty. Absolutely. That's where all these things come from. Fear of death and fear of uncertainty. Why do we think the universe is conscious? Another great point. The problem is, I don't deny that completely, that the universe could be conscious, but and that we tap into that in some way. I don't deny that, but I do think it's very much a need of people, and so much with YouTube and a lot of modern sort of people that are on different YouTube channels and so on, just constantly talking about that and the use of psychedelics to tap into that and all that stuff. Brains are just brains; they're in a skull. Once you look at the science of that, it's very much a clinging to. Again, it's a lot of this everything happens for a reason, law of attraction, is kind of in some way like a modern day religion that's now very, very, very common. I'm keeping them separate for the obvious reason, but they are like that. So we do have to tread very carefully with that. They're packaged very similarly in terms of how they operate. Very much on it's very much done in a modern day religion, and where they want more and more celebrities to endorse it, more and more people to be sort of singing behind it, and it creates that same situation. Was wondering if you're going to be talking about the happens for a reason thing. Good. Okay, yeah, that is what I'm doing today. I try to explain to my girlfriend that the law of attraction doesn't make sense because she is a hard believer in it. That's a difficult argument for the reason that I just said. Law of attraction, when you do think about it, is a bit, in a way, its own sort of modern day religion, which makes it difficult. And I forget to mention that point because I'd only just remembered that when that was brought up. I read the book, really mind-blowing. Great. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic book, The Myth of Self-Esteem. It's one of Albert Ellis's great Great books, really breaks down all the ideas of that. I mean, all these books I think should be in schools from a young age, but in a more simplified form for children. I think they would change things hugely. I was doing well until COVID came along. I backtracked. Can you talk about relapsing? Relapsing, all it is you were feeling comfortable and something came along that made you feel uncomfortable. Your tools will still apply here in the same way. I did a video just the other day on coronavirus. I think it's on YouTube, or if you scroll back through my Instagram, there's quite a few pages with a lot of text that I've attached underneath on how to accept and how to be at peace with coronavirus. So check those out. What are your thoughts on acceptance commitment therapy? I think it's a very important part of OCD recovery. It's there's a lot of the principles of ACT or what I cover as well, but it's I don't think on its own it gets under. I don't think it gives a deep enough level for the majority of people. I think it can for some, but not really. It's more about sort of accepting any feeling or thought or anything that you have inside versus a deeper level of acceptance through sort of philosophically breaking down your rational and irrational beliefs and helping to get a deeper level of acceptance on things in reality, which I think is often needed with OCD. Well, not often, I see it all the time, because without that, the OCD tends to still cling. Is acceptance the way to go when there's a fear of backsliding? Acceptance is the way to go with everything. Backsliding is basically fear of fear, so scared of being scared again. So learning to accept that and seeing that wouldn't be the end of the world if you were scared. It wouldn't be ideal, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. Is it normal to have a phase with OCD where you like the disorder, are even proud of having it? Yeah, because it's made up a lot of your identity for a long time, so you've got used to it. But in relation to losing it, you're always better not having a disorder is always a benefit. Learning from the things you get from a disorder but not being in the disordered state is better. But even if you're in the disordered state, you can still live your life, you can still function, and as it gets less and less, it improves and helps things more and more. I agree completely. People who reject religion tend to adopt the law of attraction, spirituality, universe type stuff. It's almost the same thing as religion. It really is. It is the modern day version. As a person, do you find yourself challenging people on their harmful beliefs, like in your life and your friend circle? I know I do. I've lost many a friend with anti-religious stuff. No. I've learned, my days are spent challenging people's beliefs all day long. I don't expect my friends to be very rational. I don't get involved in it. I especially don't get involved with it with any girlfriends over the years that I've had. I leave them to their own beliefs because otherwise, although you understand the reality of the situation, it becomes a sort of a tiring process. So I'd rather leave it and just get on with friends. You can have friends that are religious, you can have family that are religious, no problem. I accept them for their beliefs of that, and that's absolutely fine. People can have their beliefs of that, and I don't go around trying to contest it all the time. But I do think it's important to be aware that you want to try and create that, to challenge that, and to just sort of take a back step and go, okay, I'm going to leave that there. I accept that they're thinking the way they are, but I'm not going to get too involved in that. Otherwise, it just make you get too annoyed. You're constantly in battles. But it's difficult when things do relate to a situation, like something's just happened and they need to be rational and they're being hugely irrational. Then it helps. I mean, I do get involved in lots of times. I was where I live. There's a reception sort of desk downstairs in the building. This was actually in another building that I lived before, and a pizza delivery guy turned up with his motorbike, and it was parked outside, and he went to deliver a pizza in one of the flats and came down, and the bike had gone. And I was at the reception, and the bike was parked on the other side of the street near some trees and dark, and it went. So it's not like me or the concierge could see that the bike had been stolen. And then basically the guy came down and he was in tears because he hadn't got any money and the bike was so valuable to him. So I broke down rationally with him and got him completely back to a state of peace, not angry, completely content with the situation. He was like, that completely changed my mind, showing him it's nothing, he's so lucky he didn't die in a crash, and so on and so on. So in those instances, very, very helpful people in life. So I do intervene at certain times. I mean, I believe that the kind of thinking, the rational thinking that I do should be something that should be around hospital beds, talking people through, bringing them out of panic attacks, making them rational before they go into operation, states of panic. I believe that. I think it's vital. I think it's the reality of life. It's rational. It should be taught all bloody day. But unfortunately, it's not like that. But I try and do my best to deliver that in an OCD world where obviously that's all at the core of it, uncertainty and being terrified of all these things. So I'm trying to work with that all the time. And so yeah, most of my days is spent doing that. As a person, let's have a look. Your lifesaver, Rob. The first time I knew I had OCD is when I found your page, and then I saw a therapist and got diagnosed. That is very good to hear. I like to hear those stories. That's great. That's really good. I love how active you are with this account. Only wondering if you'd take a break yourself. You're the best. Yeah, it's pretty full on what I do. If you read sort of a bit about my story in some of the posts and videos, I set myself maybe about 2 years ago to a 10-year mission to try and change OCD worldwide. So it's pretty full on. You know, it's like 6-7 day a week, all the time thing to do that. So you know, I think in another 8 years, I think I can definitely do that. I think it definitely will go that way. But I also think, you know, you have to make sacrifices to make those kind of changes if that's one of your goals. But I'm absolutely super passionate about what I do. I love what I do, and I'm involved in it all the time. It's very, very exciting. So yeah, I love that, and I also have a really good life outside of it, and I have a balance. But my balance is probably about 85% work, 15% the other outside of it. But it doesn't mind to me because it's not work for me. It's what I love. So yeah, it's like anything. I suppose if you're playing football at maybe a very high level and you're playing football all the time, it'd be your childhood dream. Like doing what I do is kind of like what I always wanted to do. And so doing it all the time is very rewarding like that. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I'm suffering from religion OCD. Next week I will start therapy. What do you think is the key to recovery? I think the key with religion OCD is we've got two angles. First angle is either giving up religion by disputing the irrational belief. Now that is obviously an angle. It's an angle I took, and it worked. But then I lost religion, faith, and I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in any gods. So that brought me relief. But obviously I do not encourage that people have to lose religion. They can keep their faith as well as have OCD. And the way we do that is by learning to have uncertainty, learning to go along with uncertainty and change our relationship with it. And that works just as well. We just have to use that and practice that in various ways to get under that, and that does it. And I see many people with religion not give up religion to recover from OCD. So it's completely doable. They are compatible. Rob, the confusing thing is I think I have OCD and I still don't think I have OCD. Well, OCD's biggest trick is to say it's not OCD and it's real. So don't try and convince yourself it is. We try and work on, what we do is we work on accepting even if it was real and how to get under it if that was the case. And that's what we do by breaking down the irrational beliefs and changing perspective on those things in that instance. It takes practice and it takes time, and that's what this site is all about. Also, I asked this earlier, but what about a situation where OCD is a very big part of your identity? Does it make recovery harder? No, because you learn to adapt and you take the things from OCD and then you learn to adapt and live your life with it being something that's shaped a part of your life. Look, all right, I'm working 80% of the time with OCD. Is OCD me? Absolutely not. OCD is not me in my outside life at all. But it's a part of my life, a bit of a part. But it's not. Like, I don't even talk about OCD ever outside of my life. People ask me, what do you do for a living? I don't even go into saying about OCD because I know it's going to open up 1,000 questions. So I think, no, I want some peace from it. So yeah, absolutely. You don't need to. It's a small part of my life. It's a big part of my life, a huge part of my life in terms of my working life. But in terms of my personality, it's a small part of my personality. Rational thinking and that has influenced me hugely and changed a lot of things. But the OCD, the disorder, one, because I don't suffer from it anymore, and two, is because of the things that I learnt from it are things that are a benefit now. But when I was suffering, it was consuming my whole life 95% of the time. So it was like everything that I did was OCD. So obviously it felt like it was all me. Feel the urges are way worse than intrusive thoughts itself, because it really, really feels like you want that certain thing and you're about to lose control since the urge is so strong. Yes, and that's why the urge can feel like urges are more scary often for that reason. That's why we go with the unconditional self-acceptance to help get under all of that. But urges are exactly the same as thoughts. Groinal responses to them, thoughts are all the same. Do you ever relapse? No, not like what you would consider a relapse, like a big relapse. Just maybe getting caught on a belief for a few minutes, or at worst 15 minutes of something before I put the beliefs in, because I've not been thinking about the situation to some real event in life. But rare. I mean, you can't tell the difference 99.999% of the time. I struggle the most with urges that come up. Hey, yeah, okay, that's in relation to the question before. Do you reckon REBT and ACT can complement each other? Absolutely, because that's what we're doing here. All the principles from Stoicism and Greek and Roman philosophy form CBT and REBT, and they form, and all of those become. So they form REBT, form what Albert Ellis made REBT, then with Aaron Beck formed to be CBT. I mean, all it is the practice of Stoicism and Greek and Roman philosophy that form that. And then exposures are just facing reality and seeing things for what they are. And that sort of then gets you to see that things are real, to see how things are instead of the illusions that we think they are in our head. So I think that's very important. And then ACT is part of learning to live with uncertainty, learning not to fight and control internal thoughts and things like that inside our head, accepting whatever is present, any feeling, sensation, and so on, as a part of that. So I think they're very, very important combination, and principles that we draw on in everything that I do with OCD recovery comes from many areas of that. But I think if you were to take them back from the core of what they are, they're basically just principles of life and understanding our brain and body and how we are in operating in life that form that. I have intrusive thoughts and feelings and magical thinking OCD. Is the best thing to keep exposing myself to everything that scares me and makes... Yes, always the thing. In scaring yourself, exposing yourself to all these kinds of things is the key, absolutely. Will you ever train others to become like you? No, I won't. I've thought about it a lot of times. About doing it because I work with a huge number of people. I will be moving to a lot more seminar basis so that I can reach a lot more people. I mean, the group chats sometimes is 25, 30 people at max, but the seminars I'll be moving to be able to reach a lot larger audience. Doing what I do to train someone up, it is an art. It's something that it's not just rational thinking. There's so many areas of it and so many years of developing it that to teach it is a lot of work. It would be very difficult to try and get the same result. And so I think it's better for me to just go into doing it on a seminar basis to reach more people, to be able to help more people and a wider audience. So I think that's probably what I will do. But I can't say in the future. Maybe I will. Not sure. Do you have any good exposure examples for relationship OCD? I'll cover that in a separate thing. My relationship OCD videos are on YouTube, and they give a good insight into relationship OCD, but I will cover it a lot more because it is one of the most popular topics. How to do with feeling like your thoughts can harm others. That comes under magical thinking and harm OCD. I cover that in the Instagram, on YouTube. Have a look at that as well. COVID isn't a trigger for me, but since this started, my normal OCD fears are off the scale. It's jumping from one thing to another. I can't work out why. Well, the reason is because it's changed your environment a lot, so you're more scared of your environment. That's definitely a factor that's there. And then the other thing is, you probably are on some level still scared of COVID, the effect on yourself or the effect on loved ones or the economy or whatever and how that affects you. So it probably is there at some level. Any thoughts on Howard Hughes? Is The Aviator a good film to watch? Yes, The Aviator is a great film to watch. I mean, he was obviously an aviation billionaire who had OCD, whose life was completely taken over by OCD. Someone I often talk about on here. And someone that I wish that I could have spoken to through the past, and if I had a time machine, because it would have been so easy to help him. And I think I would like to cover a lot more stuff on Howard Hughes and his life. I thought of in the past of wanting to put on a Howard Hughes exhibition, bringing OCD forward in London or somewhere like that, bringing things like his car where it had all the air filtering systems so he didn't breathe in any germs, and in relation to his contamination OCD. I thought about bringing asking his foundation to bring all of that to an exhibition, to bring OCD to the forefront of awareness, things like that, plus other things in history in relation to OCD. It was an idea I had at the time, but I'm not sure it would be relevant enough to a lot of things. I think it's probably better in just more of a picture and video format through social media sort of context. But yeah, Howard Hughes, definitely an influence there. I look forward to reading the book on Christianity and OCD that you recommend. I think it has potential to help folks' faith. I do definitely think so. I have recommended a book to Jessica, Christianity and OCD, because I definitely think that, you know, a lot of people I work with, a lot of people that are Christian and are keeping their faith, they want to be able to recover, and it's compatible. And from what I've seen of that book, it's about learning to leave your intrusive thoughts and fears and so on in sort of God's hands, so to speak. So creating a disconnection with you and the thoughts in your head, like getting more comfortable with uncertainty, and it's put in words in relation to that. I think that'd be very helpful. That's why I've asked Jessica here, because obviously I have to read a huge number of material all the time with all the stuff I work with. I've asked Jessica to read this book and to cover this for me, and give me a good sort of summary of all the main points of the book for when I talk to people about it, because obviously I don't have time to read every book that I cover, so it's very helpful to have someone like Jessica doing that, and to be compatible even with folks who don't believe, who are helping those that do. Absolutely. I think it will help both people. Let's have a look here. My hand washing these days is out of control. How can I try and control that during the pandemic? It is a tricky one, but you can do it the same as you controlled it with your contamination OCD originally, with all your situation, by turning down the threat, which is COVID is exactly the same threat as you've had with other things in your life. But you've turned down the response to be uncertain and not know if it's going to affect you, if it's going to happen, or so on. And you can do exactly the same with COVID, turning down, and also it helps with rational thinking, of understanding that that once you see that COVID isn't as terrifying as often the media heightens, even in the case that we die. Well, if we do die, that's going to happen anyway. So we're never going to get out of not dying. So that is a thing that we live with hanging over us in normal life anyway. What if we suddenly die? And we get used to that. So it's very much the same. It's just turning down the response and learning to live with the uncertainty of not knowing if we get it or not, and that combination is what gets us better. My hair and beard and all of this, I come on here on Instagram Live, and you instantly, I am aware of, but accepting that I need to have a shave, I need to work out more because I've been eating too much pasta in quarantine, and also the other thing that you notice whenever you come on Instagram Lives is the amazing benefits that we have of technology, where we're able to see so many people and connect in this way, which we were never able to do in the past. I mean, watching Back to the Future as a kid, I wouldn't have necessarily thought that all of this kind of stuff would come along this quickly, and be able to help each other and be able to communicate on such a level like this in this kind of scenario with quarantine. I'm not going to answer all these questions because they're quite broad, but I'm going to cover the main ones. Rob, my OCD started when I was about 8 years old. Now I'm 16. I've hit rock bottom in January when my religion OCD hit. For how many years have you been suffering, and how have you stayed that strong? Well, it's a case of just one day at a time. I got it at 17. I was suffering for many, many years after that, till I was about maybe 24, 25. It got worse and worse at times, or it took big steps to feeling a hell of a lot worse. And yeah, one day at a time, and knowing some level I would get better, and life's so worth living for, and so wanting to do that and get recovered, and so that's what did it. Felt like hell at times. You feel like you're fighting a war in your head all the time, but got there in the end. If you taught someone and had like one conflicting opinion, can you imagine the reaction from us OCDs? If you taught someone and had like one conflicting opinion, can you imagine the reaction from us OCD? Are you referring as in me teaching somebody to help people with OCD? I just read the post about Tesla, and I had the same thing. I used to have to do sit-ups and press-ups 33. Yeah, numbers is a very, very common one with OCD. We all have, with certain superstitions that we have in life that OCD gets into, and then as we go through life, they often stay there unless we break them down. Yes, OCD can be related to obsessions, can be based to serious concerns rather than little, unreasonable ones. Anything. OCD latches to anything. People think, oh, is it not OCD if it doesn't latch to that? It's OCD if it latches to anything. You stop trying to work out, is it OCD or is it real or whatever. Whatever it latches to, anything at all, doesn't matter. Can I tell my husband my intrusive thoughts because I feel bad form of reassurance? That's confession. Don't want to be doing that all day long. In emergencies, talking to him and saying you're not having a hard time, yes, but not all day long. That is the compulsion. Rob, when you first got your OCD, have you thought that you would make it this far with all the pain? Absolutely not. I was sitting in my bedroom and I was reading a book and thinking that I've got to get myself better. I didn't think it would change the direction of my life, but you don't think of things looking back like that. Like anything. You might look back to a time you met your girlfriend or boyfriend in a nightclub, drunk, and then think, fucking hell, that was the night where I met my future husband. At that time, so life goes like that. When will the quarantine end? That's the thing I don't know, so I can't really answer that question. Uncertainty. Rob, because I got OCD, I stay home a lot because when I go outside, it triggers my OCD. What can I call this? Well, going outside is your exposure. You need to do that. Don't worry about calling it anything. Agoraphobia, I think it can become a bit light, but often we give the term too easily. It can become a bit like agoraphobia, but usually it's because we've just got used to being in an OCD cycle and scared of facing anything that's outside. And you know, we've got to be a bit careful with that. Otherwise, what people do is they get trapped behind so many diagnoses and so many different things that they feel completely trapped. You know, people come to me and say, oh my God, I've got this and I've got that and I've got this, and like so many of them are just basically stemmed off ideas from anxiety, where depersonalization, symptom of anxiety, sweating, heart palpitation, symptom of anxiety. They think they've got 20 conditions, so let's just try and roll along with it one day at a time, whatever we're feeling, and try not to label everything. Okay guys, I think I've covered most of the main things I wanted to cover today. And I hope that was helpful for all you guys in relation to the question and answers that I covered. I know a lot of them were references to YouTube and Facebook, but please check those out because there is a lot of content on there that I put up for free to help you guys. And yeah, I think covered quite a few of the main points. I'll be back on here more regularly, and I will see you guys then. All right, guys, see you later.